everybody, this is a stick-up. Nobody move. Any of you, mother?
Whoa. I know you like Pulp Fiction, but you can't say those lines here.
Well, 2 PG-13.
Hey, welcome. We're Blair and Jen Koss, and welcome to this episode of Will They Make It? And in today's episode, we're talking about how to increase margins.
Yes, without robbing a bank.
No Pulp Fiction here.
So you have two levers to push to achieve good margins, and this will probably not be a surprise to anybody. But you can lower cost or you can raise the price. There's really not any other options out there. Go ahead.
There's no magic pixie dust you can sprinkle on this one to change your margins. But how do you go about, first of all, lowering the cost? That's one of the big, because that's going to be the first one everybody goes to.
So, this is where, the magic of businesses is they figure out how to do this through these other, techniques and such. So, for us, one is to buy in larger quantities. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to lower costs without disrupting quality. And so, we went from prototyping, we were doing the little markets and trying things out, to ordering directly from a manufacturer. Correct. And that was a huge breakthrough for us.
And here's a really quick thing. Why does ordering in bulk make such a difference? Well, it's actually because when you go to order something, they have to tool up, they have to get the machines going and stuff like that. Yeah. And to do runs of 10, just 10, that's a lot of ramp up and ramp down and a bunch of other stuff to get everybody geared to do 10 right. Versus if they can start going through and running 100 or 1,000, it's much more efficient to do the things. And so you will get better pricing, and you'll typically get better quality too, just because you have the larger volume going through the system.
I would say one of the things that we have spent an inordinate amount of time on over the past 3 years is really the supply chain, finding good suppliers.
Yeah.
And we didn't always
Trusting suppliers too.
Yeah, we didn't always have good suppliers, and we went through a couple of different ugly scenarios. But
learn your lessons.
But don't get frustrated and give up. Just go work and get more samples and try other suppliers until you find one that really resonates with you, and treat all of them like they're going to be a long-term supplier.
And it's a supplier relationship is a two-way street. You need to look for the right suppliers, but you also have to show up and level up too, which means you've got to have your specs in order. You need to know what you're asking for. Are your timelines being accurate? Are you being reasonable? Can you pay them?
Unless you're a large company, and if you are, you probably don't need to be watching us. But if you're the small bird in the flock here, like we are, you don't have much leverage with suppliers. So you've got to really be professional. You've got to be really considerate, very nice. And work hard to develop that relationship. Mm-hmm. And if you do, some of them will appreciate what you're trying to do. You're probably doing something interesting and a little bit different for them. And they'll take a liking to you, and it'll work out really well, which has been the case for us.
It has been the case, and we've actually also found out from suppliers, they're looking for variety too, but especially many of them that do service larger companies, they actually look for smaller ones to come through, because for them to only have the big whales, as they like to call the big companies, can be very risky for them, because all of a sudden if one of that big brand just says, hey, I'm done with that supplier, they could lose a boatload of work. And so they look for smaller suppliers to even out their cash flow.
And that's certainly the case with our cord supplier. Correct. They are a supplier of large European lighting companies, and they were actually willing to go above and beyond to work with a U.S. manufacturer, as small as we are, but to add diversity. And so we were an important little part of their strategy to diversify both from those large manufacturers, but also the region, going from just Europe to adding North America and Australia to their mix.
One of the other things to think about when you talk about your costs is you can look at your packaging and your materials. So you don't want to go too chintzy on your packaging and materials, but I would say this is something that I see people go way overboard on, and they spend lots and lots of money. And when you start adding up, you think it's simple, but when you start adding up that tissue paper and those boxes.
We were just talking to some friends of ours that have a little shop that we'll probably explore a little bit later in this series. But they spend $1 on each little sticker that they put onto the wrap tissue paper stuff. That's $1 of cost in the packaging.
Which, and then, you know, nowadays too, you really do have to start thinking about is as certain generations come through, that kind of extra stuff is actually environmentally uncool. So you could be spending a lot of money on packaging for something that actually turns people off because they're thinking about that environmental footprint.
Yeah, I mean, if you know us at all, if you come into our store or get something from us, what you're going to find is that it's a black and white print on a recycled paper. You know, we use ink from a recycled cartridge. You know, we probably take this too far. Our bags don't have logos or anything on them, so you can reuse the bag.
Right.
We're all about keeping things out of the landfill, or if you're having new stuff, it's from recycled materials.
Yeah.
So that's and again, we do that both one from an ethos perspective, but also a cost perspective.
There is a cost perspective.
It's a lot less expensive to have non-logo bags and tissue and you know.
And the recycled paper is a lot cheaper too, actually, than all the fancy glossy.
So like I say, if you can work that into the way that your company's presented, it makes a big difference.
So, but Blair, while we head into the next section, though, let's talk about the great big elephant sitting in the room. Because when people talk about costs, then they're like, oh, you know, if I just cut that corner. So how does that work with the quality aspect too? Because that's the one you...
Well, and again, you can, you know, if you just focus on cost, then you're going to constantly run your quality down to where you're just competing in the middle, and then you're going to have no margins because the big players work there all the time.
And you're not special anymore either. And if you're a small player, you have to be special. So if you're not special, then...
So if you think about what we've just talked about the last couple of minutes, it hasn't been about cutting quality. It's been using other levers to bring the cost of each product, direct cost, down.
And one quick thing too is also being smart with your labor. So that is like your labor going through too, and you want to pay people good wages. So like, be careful about being chintzy on what you pay people. You don't have to be crazy, but be careful with that. But it's being smart with how you put your stuff together. Like we have it in our facility. Do you have jigs? Do you have workstations set up where people can grab tools right away? Do you have it where they can be the most effective to do their jobs? Like if you have everything a mess with your labor trying to put stuff together, shame on you.
And I would say, you know, because we are actually assembling, you know, light manufacturing here, which is not going to be the case for everybody. But if you are doing that, it's worth finding, like we have a retired machinist that came through and just took a look at what we were doing. And he had like 5 great suggestions that literally trimmed off, you know, 10, 20% of time, just much more effective.
And that 10, 20% all adds up model after model. That's a huge cost savings.
So, and we come from an engineering background.
So how do we charge a higher price?
Yes, that's the
other lever. So remember, lever number 1 is lowering the cost. Lever number 2 is higher price.
Yeah, and this is really, we're biased to this. This is really how you want to go after a business and doing things that allow you to charge higher prices and be successful with that.
Yeah.
And you know, for us, it's the higher quality lighting components, providing a product that is far superior over other things that people see. And you know, one of the examples is, you know, we came up with the idea of putting dimmers onto our small accent lights, whether it be the Idea Box or the camera lights. But that was breakthrough.
Oh yeah, people love it because then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can use this as a night light, or I can have it in my media room while a movie's playing, and it actually gave them opportunities to see where it could be in their home.
Yeah, and that dimmer switch was enabled by, again, that European supplier that, you know, by ordering, I think our MOQ's minimum order quantity was like 500 per cord set. But by getting that higher thing, we were actually able to get the dimmers with the whole cord set, longer cord, better quality fabric for less than what we were doing with just, you know, going through Amazon and putting the kits together ourselves.
Yeah. And one other thing that we can do to raise price, we mentioned this on our prior episode of I'm trying to think what the episode was here, but I'm blanking on it.
Doesn't matter. It's a prior episode.
But anyway, it was talking about how the context of the space would help you to increase your pricing. And so that is one way to increase your pricing, is really think about how you're showing and presenting it. And it does not have to be the creme de la creme space, but is it being presented in a way that's approachable? Does it provide and do a value add? Like if you just chuck stuff on a table and think that everybody's going to show up and pay you top dollar, it's not happening.
Yeah. And the hilarious thing is we just filmed that prior episode, and it is a prior episode in this. That's how good our memory is. The other key is marketing, public relations.
Yes.
If you can really make that quality shine a compelling argument of why you're special, and communicate that through good PR, which is where it's a news story, newsworthy kind of story, and newspapers, radio, television, that kind of thing, blogs. That can add a lot of cachet to what you're doing, and then actually paying for marketing is a valid approach if you are thinking about niche targeted advertising.
Well, yeah, and you got to keep in mind too, somebody can come by, see you, think you're the greatest thing on the planet.
And they do. Oh, no, wait.
No, they do. No, they do. They do, but you got to remember, people are being bombarded from all around them with different messages, different sayings, different stuff like that. So part of your marketing is just to get in front of the customer for them to remember your experience.
Oh, yeah. I mean, put yourself in their shoes. I mean, in everybody's shoes. I mean, you just get bombarded all day long. How do you rise above that?
Yeah,
and again, the more, and that starts at the fundamentals of what your business is offering, what you're doing. Why is it special? You've got to make sure it's special to rise above that din.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Absolutely. Well, that is a wrap for this week's episode of Will They Make It? Now it's on to your questions out there. So Blair, if somebody has a question, how can they submit that to us?
Go to our website, willtheymakeit.com, and look for the appropriate button to ask a question. And we're going to look for you to provide a voice memo or a short video. So we want to actually hear directly from you.
We do. And now on to this week's question.
Hey, Blair and Jen. It's Candace from Tiki Botanicals in Columbus, Ohio. I do the social media marketing for our shop, and because social media isn't a thing from my generation growing up, I'm not exactly sure that I'm doing it correctly. How do you go about measuring success with your social media?
Candace, we struggle with this too.
Yes, we do.
and I actually have to say, I think it was far more effective 5 years ago than it is today.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think it has the same effectiveness. I don't think the influencers have the same amount of effectiveness as they did 5 years ago.
And there's a lot more noise out there and stuff.
There
and
is
this
a
is
lot
where
more
the big brands have really made a science out of this. They've got these expensive tools.
Which is a small business owner, there's just nothing you're going to be able to sign up for and afford and do it. So actually what we're doing, full disclosure here, we're actually spending 80% of our time on PR and media. And we keep our social media accounts really just as a way to interact with the customer and as a little bit of brand recognition, but it's not our main avenue of marketing.
Yep. And with that, we do try to count a little bit. We ask, do you follow us on Instagram or Facebook? And then we also just measure the number of likes versus the number of followers we have when we do a post, which are not over scientific, but it does at least let you benchmark against other people and stuff. And we've had influencers come in that have 100,000 followers, and I really never see an impact from that. So
I really have, from a numbers perspective, I have yet to see a sale that I can tie back to an influencer post versus PR. When we do a PR, I can tie actual sales back to that PR. Or
where's the saxophone lamp? I'll take it. It's like, that's amazing. Yeah. So anyways, thanks for the question, Candace.
Thanks. All right. Well, thanks for those questions. Keep them coming, everybody. That's a wrap for this week's episode of Will They Make It?
Thanks to our producer, Claire Costello.
Thank you, Claire. And hey, we hope to see you back here next time.
Have a good one, everybody.